The Harvest of Death by Edwina Longbottom. The Harvest Festival in Mark Cross was always a time of joy and community, but this year the festivities were overshadowed by an air of unease. The village square was adorned with golden bales of hay, pumpkins, and garlands of autumn leaves, but the cheerful chatter of villagers was tinged with whispers of something darker. The morning had begun with the discovery of a body in the old mill by the river, a man, face down on the flour-dusted floor, his throat slit. The victim was none other than Thomas Hargrave, the wealthy landowner who had recently returned to the village after years abroad. Inspector Eleanor Blake, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for solving the unsolvable, had been called in from London to investigate. As she examined the scene, she noticed a peculiar detail. Clutched in Thomas' hand was a single stalk of wheat, its grains oddly blackened. The villagers were quick to offer theories. Some blamed a disgruntled tenant farmer, others whispered of an old family curse. But Eleanor knew better than to rely on superstition. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the square, she began her interviews. The first person she spoke to was Margaret Hargrave, Thomas' estranged wife, who had been seen arguing with him the night before.
Margaret's eyes were red-rimmed, but her voice was steady. "I had no reason to kill him," she said. "Our marriage was over long ago."
Eleanor wasn't so sure. As she left the Hargrave estate, she noticed a figure lurking in the shadows, a young man with a scar across his cheek, watching her intently. He vanished before she could approach him. The night was far from over, and Eleanor sensed that the secrets of Mark Cross ran deeper than the river that wound through it. Chapter 2. Eleanor decided to prioritize questioning the villagers, knowing that the scarred man could wait. She began with the most obvious suspects, those who had publicly clashed with Thomas. Her first stop was the home of Samuel Treadwell, a tenant farmer who had been evicted by Thomas just weeks earlier. Samuel was gruff and uncooperative, but Eleanor noticed his hands trembling as he spoke.
"He ruined me," Samuel muttered, "but I didn't kill him."
Eleanor wasn't convinced, but she moved on to her next interview, Eliza Carter, the village baker. Eliza had been seen arguing with Thomas over unpaid debts, but she claimed she was at the bakery all night, kneading dough for the festival. Her alibi seemed solid, but Eleanor noted the faint smell of smoke on her apron. The blackened wheat stalk in Thomas' hand suggested he had been near fire before his death, and Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that Eliza was hiding something. As the night deepened, Eleanor returned to the village square, where the festival lights flickered in the cold breeze. She spotted the scarred man again, this time speaking with Margaret Hargrave near the old oak tree. Their conversation seemed tense, and Margaret quickly walked away when she noticed Eleanor approaching. The scarred man turned to face her, his expression unreadable.
"You're asking the wrong questions," he said cryptically before disappearing into the shadows.
Eleanor's mind raced. The blackened wheat stalk, the smell of smoke on Eliza's apron, and the scarred man's cryptic warning all pointed to a deeper mystery. She needed to piece together the clues before the killer struck again. Chapter 3. Eleanor wasted no time in confronting Eliza Carter. She found the baker in her shop, kneading dough with a vigor that seemed almost frantic. The smell of smoke was still faintly detectable on her apron. "Eliza," Eleanor began, her tone firm but not accusatory, "I need to ask you about last night. Where were you, really?"
Eliza paused, her hands stilling in the dough. "I told you I was here, baking," she replied, but her voice wavered.
Eleanor held up the blackened wheat stalk, now carefully preserved in a small evidence bag. This was found in Thomas' hand. It suggests he was near fire before he died. And you smell of smoke. Care to explain?
Eliza's face paled. She hesitated, then sighed. "All right, I was at the old mill last night. Thomas had asked me to meet him there. He wanted to discuss a business matter. But when I arrived, he was already dead. I panicked and left. I didn't want to get involved."
Eleanor studied her closely. "Why didn't you come forward?"
Eliza looked away. "I have a family to protect. I couldn't risk it."
Eleanor nodded, filing away the information. She wasn't entirely convinced of Eliza's innocence, but she had more pressing matters to attend to. The scarred man's cryptic warning echoed in her mind. He was clearly a key to the investigation, and his knowledge could unravel the entire case. Determined, Eleanor set out to track him down. She began by asking around the village, but no one seemed to know his name or where he lived. Finally, she found a lead. An old woman who sold herbs at the market claimed to have seen him heading toward the woods on the outskirts of the village. Armed with this information, Eleanor ventured into the woods, her lantern casting flickering shadows on the trees. She didn't have to search long before she found him, sitting on a fallen log, staring into the darkness.
"You're persistent," he said without turning around. "I told you, you're asking the wrong questions."
Eleanor stepped closer. "Then tell me what the right questions are. Who are you, and what do you know about Thomas Hargrave's death?"
The man finally turned to face her, his scar catching the light. "My name is Jacob," he said, "and if you want to solve this, you need to look into the Hargrave family's past. The answers lie there."
With that, he stood and disappeared into the night, leaving Eleanor with more questions than answers. Chapter 4. Eleanor decided to follow Jacob's advice and delve deeper into the Hargrave family's past. She began by visiting the village archives, where she uncovered old records and letters that painted a picture of a family steeped in secrets. The Hargraves had been the most influential family in Mark Cross for generations, but their wealth and power had come at a cost. There were whispers of shady business deals, feuds with other families, and even rumors of a tragic fire that had claimed the lives of several servants decades ago. Eleanor's attention was drawn to a particular incident involving Thomas' father, Edward Hargrave, who had been accused of embezzling funds from the village council. The case had been quietly swept under the rug, but the scandal had left a lasting mark on the family's reputation. As she pieced together the fragments of Hargrave history, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that the key to Thomas' murder lay in these buried secrets. Meanwhile, Jacob's connection to the Hargrave family was becoming clearer. He had been the estate manager for the Hargraves, a position he had held for over a decade before abruptly resigning. His reluctance to share more information was tied to a non-disclosure agreement he had signed when he took the job, binding him to silence about the family's affairs. Eleanor tracked Jacob down again, this time finding him at the edge of the village, near the ruins of an old barn. "I know about your NDA," she said, cutting straight to the point. "But a man is dead, Jacob. If you know something that could help, you need to tell me."
Jacob hesitated, his scarred face tense with conflict. "I can't break the agreement," he said finally. "But I can tell you this. Look into the fire, the one that happened 20 years ago. That's where it all started."
With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Eleanor to ponder his cryptic words. She returned to the archives, determined to uncover the truth about the fire and its connection to Thomas' murder. As she sifted through the old records, she found a report detailing the fire at the Hargrave estate. It had been ruled an accident, but the names of the victims caught her eye. Among them was a young woman named Clara, who had been a maid in the household. Clara's death had been overshadowed by the scandal surrounding Edward Hargrave, but Eleanor sensed that her story was crucial to understanding the present. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to come together, but the picture they formed was darker than she had imagined. Chapter 5. Eleanor knew that Clara's death was the linchpin to unraveling the mystery. She spent hours poring over the archives, piecing together the fragments of Clara's life and her connection to the Hargrave family. The young maid had been more than just a servant. She had been romantically involved with one of the Hargraves, Edward Hargrave himself. Their affair had been a closely guarded secret, but letters hidden in the archives revealed the depth of their relationship. Clara had also been privy to the family's financial difficulties, which had been mounting at the time of the fire. The fire, which had claimed Clara's life and destroyed a portion of the estate, had been ruled an accident, but whispers of an insurance fraud had circulated in the village. Eleanor found a faded newspaper clipping that hinted at an investigation into the fire, but it had been abruptly closed with no conclusion. The blackened wheat stalk in Thomas' hand now took on new significance. It was a symbol of the fire, a grim reminder of the past that someone wanted to bring to light. Eleanor theorized that Thomas had discovered the truth about the fire and his father's involvement, and that knowledge had cost him his life. She decided to confront Margaret Hargrave again, this time armed with the information about Clara and the fire. Margaret's reaction was telling. She paled at the mention of Clara's name and became visibly agitated.
"That was a long time ago," she said, her voice trembling. "It has nothing to do with Thomas' death."
But Eleanor wasn't convinced. She pressed further, asking about the insurance fraud and Edward's role in the fire.
Margaret finally broke down. Edward was desperate, she admitted. The family was on the brink of ruin. He thought the fire would solve everything. But Clara, she didn't deserve to die.
Eleanor's mind raced. If Edward had orchestrated the fire for the insurance money, and Clara had been an unintended victim, then Thomas' murder could be tied to someone seeking justice or revenge. The scarred man, Jacob, had hinted at the fire's significance, and Eleanor now understood why. She needed to find him again to uncover the full truth. As she left the Hargrave estate, she noticed a figure watching her from the shadows. It was Jacob.
He stepped forward, his expression grim. "You're getting closer," he said. "But be careful. The past has a way of catching up to people."
Eleanor nodded, her resolve hardening. She was determined to bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. Chapter 6. Eleanor decided it was time to confront Edward Hargrave directly. She found him in his study, a room filled with the trappings of wealth and power, but also a palpable sense of decay. Edward, now an elderly man, looked up from his desk with a mixture of surprise and apprehension as Eleanor entered.
"Inspector Blake," he said, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. "To what do I owe this visit?"
Eleanor didn't mince words. "I know about the fire, Edward. I know about Clara and the insurance fraud. I need to hear the truth from you."
Edward's face turned ashen. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. "It was a long time ago," he murmured. "I was desperate. The family was on the brink of ruin. I thought the fire would save us. But Clara, she wasn't supposed to be there. She died because of my greed."
Eleanor listened intently, her mind racing. Edward's confession confirmed her suspicions, but it also raised new questions. Who else knew about the fire? And who would kill Thomas to keep the secret buried? As she left the study, she couldn't shake the feeling that Edward was still hiding something. Meanwhile, Jacob's true motives became clearer. He had been the estate manager, privy to the Hargrave family's darkest secrets. With the family's reputation in tatters and Edward's health failing, Jacob saw an opportunity to acquire the estate for himself. Whether through blackmail or by waiting for the crimes to be disclosed, he aimed to position himself as the rightful heir. Eleanor realized that Jacob's cryptic warnings and reluctance to share information were part of a larger plan. He could be both an ally and a threat. She decided to meet with him one last time, this time at the old mill where Thomas' body had been found. The mill was eerily quiet, the only sound the creaking of the water wheel. Jacob was waiting for her, his expression unreadable.
"You've uncovered a lot," he said. "But do you know who killed Thomas?"
Eleanor shook her head. "Not yet, but I know it's tied to the fire and Clara's death. And I know you have your own agenda."
Jacob smiled faintly. "I do. But that doesn't mean we can't help each other. The Hargrave estate is mine by right. Help me secure it, and it'll give you the evidence you need to solve Thomas' murder."
Eleanor hesitated. She needed the truth, but she couldn't trust Jacob entirely. She had to find a way to use his knowledge without falling into his trap. As she left the mill, she knew the final pieces of the puzzle were within reach. But the cost of uncovering them could be higher than she imagined. Chapter 7. Eleanor knew she couldn't compromise her integrity by agreeing to Jacob's proposal. She firmly declined his offer, stating, "I don't trade justice for favors, Jacob. The truth will come out, but it will be on my terms." Jacob's expression darkened, but he said nothing, disappearing into the shadows once more. Determined to find another way, Eleanor turned her attention back to the villagers, hoping someone else might hold a piece of the puzzle. She revisited Eliza Carter, the baker, and pressed her for more details about the night of the murder. Eliza, now visibly shaken, admitted that she had seen someone else near the mill that night, a figure she couldn't identify, but who had been carrying a lantern. This new lead gave Eleanor hope. She also revisited Samuel Treadwell, the evicted tenant farmer, who reluctantly revealed that Thomas had been pressuring him to sell his land at a fraction of its value. Samuel's bitterness was evident, but he denied any involvement in the murder. As Eleanor pieced together these fragments, she realized that the Hargrave family's secrets were not just about the fire and Clara's death. Their influence had shaped the village for generations, and exposing their misdeeds could have far-reaching consequences. Mark Cross was known as a picturesque haven for the well-to-do during the summer months, a place of charm and tranquility. If the Hargrave secrets were exposed, the village's reputation could be irreparably damaged. The scandal would deter visitors, harm local businesses, and cast a long shadow over the community. Eleanor knew she had to tread carefully, balancing her duty to uncover the truth with the need to protect the village she had come to care for. She decided to confront Edward Hargrave one final time, this time with the full weight of her findings. She found him in the garden, staring at the withered remains of what had once been a flourishing rosebush. "Edward," she began, "I know the truth about the fire, about Clara, and about the insurance fraud, but I also know that exposing this could destroy Mark Cross. I need your help to find another way."
Edward looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and resignation. "There is no other way," he said softly. "The past cannot be undone, but perhaps I can make amends."
With that, he handed her a sealed envelope. "This contains the full truth. Do with it what you must." Eleanor took the envelope, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision before her. She knew that whatever path she chose, the consequences would be profound. Chapter 8. Eleanor knew that the truth, no matter how painful, was more important than preserving the village's reputation. With a heavy heart, she opened the envelope Edward had given her. Inside were detailed accounts of the fire, Clara's death, and the insurance fraud orchestrated by Edward Hargrave. There were also letters and documents implicating other members of the Hargrave family in various misdeeds over the years. Eleanor realized that the corruption ran deep, and the only way to ensure justice was to make everything public. She arranged a meeting with the village council and local authorities, presenting the evidence she had gathered. The revelation sent shockwaves through Mark Cross. The Hargrave family's fall from grace was swift and brutal, and the village's idyllic image was tarnished. Businesses suffered as tourists stayed away, and the once bustling streets grew quiet. But Eleanor knew she had done the right thing. Justice, though painful, had been served. Meanwhile, Jacob, fearful of being charged with obstruction of justice, decided to cooperate fully with the investigation. He approached Eleanor, offering to provide additional evidence and testimony to ensure that all those involved in the crimes were held accountable.
"I may have had my own motives," he admitted, "but I don't want to see anyone else suffer because of the Hargraves' actions."
Eleanor accepted his help, though she remained cautious. Jacob's knowledge proved invaluable, leading to the arrest of several individuals who had been complicit in the Hargraves' schemes. As the investigation drew to a close, Eleanor reflected on the cost of the truth. Mark Cross would never be the same, but she hoped that, in time, the village could heal and rebuild. The scars of the past would remain, but they would serve as a reminder of the importance of integrity and justice. Chapter 9. Eleanor knew that the village of Mark Cross needed more than just justice. It needed hope. To help the village recover from the scandal, she organized a press conference. Standing before a crowd of reporters and villagers, she spoke with conviction. "The actions of the Hargrave family do not define Mark Cross," she declared. "This village is more than its past. It is a place of beauty, community, and resilience. The same charm and warmth that have always drawn people here remain unchanged. Let us not allow the mistakes of a few to overshadow the spirit of the many." Her words resonated deeply, and slowly, the village began to heal. Local businesses banded together to promote Mark Cross as a destination of authenticity and history, emphasizing its strengths rather than its scars. Tourists began to return, drawn by the village's renewed sense of pride and determination. As for Jacob, his cooperation in the investigation had come at a personal cost. He lost his job as the estate manager, and with it, his sense of self-worth. The Hargrave estate, now under new ownership, no longer had a place for him. Eleanor, however, believed that Jacob had suffered enough. She recommended that no further action be taken against him, recognizing that his decision to help had been a step toward redemption. Jacob, though humbled, found solace in the fact that he had played a part in uncovering the truth. He began to rebuild his life, taking on odd jobs around the village and slowly earning back the trust of the community. The scars of the past remained, but they served as a reminder of the importance of honesty and accountability. Mark Cross, though changed, emerged stronger, its spirit unbroken. Eleanor, too, found closure. She had done what she had set out to do, uncover the truth and deliver justice. As she prepared to leave the village, she took one last walk through the square, now bustling with life once more. The Harvest Festival decorations were being taken down, but the sense of renewal in the air was unmistakable. Mark Cross would endure, and so would its people. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and activate the bell so you're notified each time we publish. Thank you for listening.